or an instructor. Ask your questions.
Yeah. And if we have the opportunity, I mean, we can always go on a Zoom or a Google Meet or whatever, like
Absolutely.
right away. Like it doesn't have to be during office hours. Office hours are just like we're sort of promising that will be available during the office hours. So yeah, you're right.
So I have a lot of time next week. If anybody has time and wants to meet up, go over stuff, let me know because I'm available. And we can even do group if you want. Like if you guys want to pick a time and do, like a couple of you get together, just let me know.
Yep. And I think I'm available for mentoring as well. And I don't know how that works, but there's a calendar somewhere and someone will, let me know if you need help anytime. Just
Yeah.
let me know. Sounds like though, we need some review maybe on how to do some of the homeworks. What is okay? You want to go over all of the assignments in order, maybe? We can start with the first one. Sure, let's do it. Oh, the weekend project. Yeah. Yep. Yep. A lot of math to deal with this week compared to probably the most in years for some people.
Yeah.
I feel like I understood what you were showing us while you were showing it, but I don't feel like I learned the fundamentals of how to do it myself, if that makes any sense. I feel like I understand what a function is and some of the other stuff, but I did a function and I had one bit done, but I'm now I don't know how to make the part where I write the question. I don't know the steps or the specifics, I guess is what it is with these, with the homework assignment. You know what I mean? That's kind of where I'm sort of at.
Let me try to say that back. You're saying once you get to, you're looking at an empty code file and you have to do a certain thing. It's well, you've learned the principles, but getting from one to the other is a tricky part, right?
Yeah, for me personally, I don't know if anyone else feels that way, but watching you do it made sense to me, but it didn't. Once I'm not watching someone, I'm I don't know the order. The function one I sort of got, but that's the only one.
Yeah.
So just so that you guys know, what you are actually feeling and experiencing and being overwhelmed is completely normal. Having been gone through the first cohort myself, that we were all the same way. We were all like, what the heck? We're never going to be able to do this. But it does get better because this first week that involves all the math and everything, you're like, oh my God, I'm never going to be able to do this. But it doesn't stay math. You go on and you start doing a ton of other things, and then you're like, oh, well, it really isn't that bad.
Yeah.
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 It will take time. I mean, I said it was going to take time. I said you're going to feel overwhelmed and lost. Wasn't joking. I'm glad, Karen, I'm really glad you're here though, because you've gone through the same process very recently. And so you can kind of this is Karen can be a witness to this. Yeah.
I can tell you just about every person in our cohort. There was only, I think, 11 of us by the time we were done. And I would say that probably every person felt the same way that you are feeling right now with oh my God, what the heck is this? And I'm never going to understand this. You're completely overwhelmed and you're okay. My biggest suggestion is the free code camp exercises. Do them.
Well, let's maybe let's go to those today if we have time. But first, let's go through the homework problems. I don't necessarily want to just show everybody the weekend problem, but I mean, unless you've really tried it and you're stuck, then that's okay. But I want everyone to try each of these problems. I really want to so if we've already tried this and we want to, let's do that. It's no big deal. We're not trying to the grades from the homework is kind of meaningless. We're just trying to have a regular thing where we can, you can check in and, we're encouraging just that consistent effort that is really going to be so important here.
And to ask the questions, that's,
Yeah.
I mean,
And
we
to
can't
get
say it
stuck,
enough.
and to get stuck, to get frustrated, to get stuck, to get used to that feeling. And because that's an important part of the process. Okay, let's go through some of these homework.
Elena, that's probably normal. And sometimes it's as little as like forgetting a quotation mark or, not closing a curly bracket or something like that. That's the most frustrating part of it. Once you get going, because you're like, I know this is right, but it's not running. And then when you go back through, it's something that small. It's extremely frustrating.
Yep.
Yeah, I feel like most of my errors, I'm not really sure. And I don't have my computer, so I couldn't like share my screen or post it in the chat. I feel like most of my errors were like syntax errors and stuff like that. And I tried to like run through it several times and add stuff where they needed to be, but I don't know. I just feel like, no offense to you, Gus. Like I feel like you did a really good job actually this week, but I just feel like I didn't retain any of the information. I don't know why. It was just very overwhelming this week for me.
Yep. That's
It's normal.
normal. Yeah.
Because we all felt like that. Like after our first week, we were like, we didn't know how to express it really. We were just like,
yeah. Let's go through some stuff, because the only way to get past this kind of feeling is to just keep going. I mean, we really just have to spend more time on this. The newer concepts are just going to keep coming for a while, but like it's going to take a while for even the stuff last week to start to kind of fit together. And a lot of the slides and the material we covered is there for you to look back later and to say, well, someone just talked about an expression today. I don't really remember what that is. And maybe, having the slides and having a little bit of the first exposure to it will help you at that point. Knowing that, oh, that's a word I should look out for even is some progress, of course. Yeah. Okay, let me share my screen. Let's do some of the homeworks. Hopefully this is going to help, because if you've already gotten stuck with some of these homeworks, that's great, because then we can see solving them, what that process looks like, and you can start to look at what's the difference, what pieces were you missing. A lot of times, like Karen said, it's like a tiny thing. It's like a semicolon. Latanya, if you are okay with me doing this, I could show you got so close on the WizWaz homework and you had one little thing, and we could look at yours. If you want to look at it in class, let me know.
she says that's fine.
Okay. Well, let's do the first day first and go from there. So the first homework was, well, delete. This is my Scratch file from class. Is everybody having is everybody seem to be doing okay with like navigating around VS Code, getting the terminal in the right place? Is that something that you're still having problem with? I just want to start there, because if no
Dominique,
problem.
Susan, Mel, Latonia, Ariel, they all are saying that they're pretty good with it.
Yes, Carolyn, it's all Google Classroom. Okay, wow, it's getting easier. That's amazing. Like that is something to celebrate on its own. Like that, this is, it's been, it takes time. Everything is taking time. And we're, the classwork is probably weeks ahead of where your comfort level is, but that's great news. I'm really happy to hear that. We are going to do, I think on Monday, we're going to do a little more of an exercise of like managing files outside of the GitHub desktop, because we do need to like look a little bit at like, just the other things. We're doing this a very, very easy way to get to VS Code. But if you're already comfortable navigating around the files over here, checking that your terminal is in the right place here, and running commands, and you're having success, that's fantastic. That's really good news. And that's better. I was worried that we would be struggling with this for longer. So that's great. Okay. So I am in the module 4 folder, and again, control click, open in integrated terminal at the folder you want. And I have a file here, and I made this by doing control click new file, and I named it scratch.js. So I can run node scratch.js, and this is the same file from class. Whoops, I didn't save this. So I have an empty file, and if I run, whoops, I didn't want the Excel. If I run up enter, I get nothing because the file's empty. So let's just do some of our homework problems in this. Carolyn, if you want, you're welcome to. This, I mean, obviously you can revisit the recording later, but if you code along with me, you're going to get the answers to the homework on your own. So if you're okay with just being given the answers to the homework, then save the files and turn them in, and that'll work.
I'm sorry, Gus. My
Yeah.
husband and son just left to go up to Clarkson to get some stuff, and my dog wanted to go out, and I had to jump up and leave. So I heard my name, but I heard nothing else, and now all I hear is barking outside. So I'm sorry.
Yeah, you can try to code along. You can just watch. We're going to be doing the homework problems. So if you do code along and save the files and turn them in, you'll pass the homework. It's not a big deal whether or not you get the homework right. We're really just trying to get everybody to submit something.
It, right? Because I'll do Zoom on my other thing, and I'll code on my Mac. But,
Okay, so just to clarify, I can submit my code even though it doesn't run. I mean, I'm gonna try to get it to run. But
Please, yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. Please submit whatever you have this week. Don't worry about whether it's right
Okay.
or not.
Oh, well,
You'll
that's what I was
probably-
getting stuck on
Yeah.
because I couldn't get it to
Yeah.
run.
Be
So I was
right
like, I don't
back.
want to submit
Please,
something that doesn't
please.
work.
Please submit anything for the homework rather than not submitting anything. And don't worry about not getting it to work. The point is we're trying to get a signal of how everybody is doing with the material, whether we need to revisit certain things, whether we need to, the homework is to help me. It's not as much as it is to help, it's good to get practice, so it will help you, but it's as much or more to help me and to help the class, the instructors understand what do we need to focus more on, what are we not communicating well enough.
sorry.
So, yeah.
It's like having a toddler again.
Quick question
So-
before you
so-
go into it. So if I did the homework and I got it working and then I tried to add something to it and it messed up what I already had working,
Oh.
could I submit both versions?
Of course.
With
Yeah,
the
you can
question, is that
submit-
the best way to do it?
the
Okay,
more the better. The more the
Okay.
better.
thanks.
And it's
Susan?
really, don't think of it like you need to get it right. Please don't think of it like that. It is do your best with the problem, submit what you get, and thank you, because that will help us. That's it.
Because like that thing I was talking to you about on that second assignment, I just was trying to do like from memory, the logic of it, and it wasn't complete by any means, but that's the one that I had sent to you via private messenger or whatever. So I will put that in Classroom for now. We've done it since, but just to show you where my brain was before we covered it. So
Okay.
that would be good to do, right?
It would absolutely would. Yes.
Oh, okay. But Google Classroom.
All homework through Google Classroom, weekend
And-
assignment in Google Classroom.
And
yes.
any comments we want to make about the homework, we should direct message you through Slack and say this goes with homework number 1000 or whatever.
So when you submit in Google Classroom, there is a way to put comments right with your homework.
Right, which
So if you prefer that, if I'm looking at the homework anyway, I'm going to still see the
Oh,
comments.
so we can still do that.
Either one is totally.
I got confused how that was working for you if it was. So, all right, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm gonna
Susan
try and
posted
get in-
code in the channel, Gus.
Oh, okay.
Oh, that's right. We have that paste.
Oh yeah, that's how far I got, and not very far.
Okay. Yeah. So let's do them in order. We'll get to this when we do the day 4, and if you want, we'll look at yours as an example. Does that sound good?
I'm going to go into Zoom on my other computer and make a switch here. So
Okay.
we'll
So
lose my daffodils. I won't have a virtual
Carolyn,
background.
I'm sorry, I'm going to have to mute you because.
Oh, I'm done.
We got to start going here. Yeah. Okay. So first first day homework was to do a slightly different math problem. Let me see, what was it? It was just the same kind of question as the original question we did in class, where you find the number of children and adults who combined ticket prices add up to a certain number. And yeah, so here's the problem. Basically, the way to solve this was to take the code from class. Now, this is the after code. Remember, it has this error case we didn't cover in class, but it has one extra check where if the number of adults goes all the way below 0 and we haven't found the answer yet, then we know that there's no solution to the problem. So that should have some extra case. But otherwise, this is the exact thing we typed in class on Monday. I'm just going to go Command A to select the whole thing, Command C to copy it, and then I'm going to go into my Scratch file and do Command V to paste it. And I'll save this and we'll run this right away just to make sure that we have the original answer to the problem. So it's starting with the all adults and no children. Here's the ticket prices and the total earnings. These are const because they aren't changing during the whole problem. We have a Boolean, true or false, to say whether we've solved the problem yet. And then we loop while the problem is not solved. Oh, and we called this problem is solved in class. Problem is solved. While the problem is not solved, we're going to loop it through this code, and we're going to multiply the current number of children we're storing here by the price of the children, and the current number of adults by the price of adult. And we're going to check whether that hypothetical earnings matches the earnings that we got from our problem. And if so, we've solved the problem. So we set problem is solved is true. And then if we've gone down to 0 adults and we're still counting, well, there's no solution to the problem because we've tried every combination of children and adults. Otherwise, we're going to try the next combination of children and adults. So each loop, we will take away 1 adult from our variables here and we'll add 1 child, because the problem, remember, stated that there were 2,200 people who attended. So if we start with 2,200 adults and no children, we subtract 1 and add 1, we get 2,199 and 1, 2,198 and 2 every time we loop. And if 1 matches, then we've solved the problem. And then because we've solved the problem, this case, the not problem is solved case, is no longer true, because problem is solved, not problem is solved is false. And that condition fails, and so we stop looping. And at that point, we know that we can log the current numbers that we have right now in our children and adults variables, and those will be the answer to the problem. So the original problem posed was that 2,200 people attended and $5,050 were collected. The homework, the only difference, still the same price for children, still the same price for adults. On a certain day, 2,100 people enter and $5,765 is collected. So the way to solve this, the most easiest way, I mean, obviously you could do the algebra problem yourself if you'd like, but the easiest way is to just say, well, the only difference here is these numbers. There's a different total, 2,100, and there's a different dollar amount collected, $5,765. So all you need to do to solve this is substitute those into the program. 5,765 for the total dollars and 2,100 for the initial number of adults. And if you look at the behavior of this, this means that every time we will be checking 2,100 total people, because again, we're subtracting one adult and adding one child each time. So the total always stays 2,100. So all you have to do is substitute in those two numbers and then run it. And you get 1,054 children, 1,046 adults. So that's the first homework problem, is basically change the numbers here and run it again. So yeah, I think I've got a lot of submissions to this one. I think most people got this. I think I have to. I've returned some people's homework and not others, and I'm trying to catch up with all the latest submissions. So just yeah, okay. So let's do the next homework. Total seconds in a year. This one is, let's see. I want to copy this. No, I don't like Google Classroom. Interface is very strange. Clicking on this does nothing, and I can't highlight it because it seems to drag it. No, and I don't want to drag it. No, I want to put it here. Well, it's 315,360,00 is the total number of seconds in a year. So I'm going to do Command A, backspace. Now, if you want to submit this, don't do that. Save this file somewhere. Go File, Save As, save it on your desktop or somewhere, and upload it to Google Classroom. But I'm going to empty out my Scratch file here, and I'm going to put, what was it? 315,360,00 is the total number of seconds in a year, just for reference, so we know if we're printing out the right thing. And the most basic solution to this is really just, I mean, the intent of this problem is just to get you used to assigning variables and doing arithmetic with numbers, all in JavaScript. So I've seen at least one submission, maybe more, that does this approach where you say, well, I will define some variables that represent the components that go into a year. Now, this is ignoring leap years or any of that other tricky stuff, but you can say const seconds in minute and name this number. Give it a name so that the program is easier to read and it makes more sense. So if you assign the number 60 to a variable and name it seconds in minute, it's just the number 60, but in the context of this program, it now has a meaning that is relevant to the program. It's not just relevant to the computer. It's not just like bits plus a type. It actually has a meaning in your program. And the meaning of this number is the number of seconds in a minute. You can do this again, const minutes in hour. And that's also 60. So this variable and this variable, they're holding the same value. There's really no need for the computer to have two different versions of the number 60. But when you're working in your program, it might be easier to understand your intent when you're multiplying these numbers together if you give them these names. And that's really the point of this whole assignment, is just to understand that assigning to names allows you to assign meaning in the context of your program. And then it allows you to understand your intent later on when you read your code, when you modify your code, when your code gets big enough that you have to go back to different places and check the meaning and the intent that you are making evident by giving these things names is the point of this homework. And it's something that, you know, it's a little silly here because, yeah, sure, you could solve it by doing 60 times 60 times 24 times 365. This is a perfectly valid answer. Console.log that. That's a valid answer, just that. it prints the number of seconds in a year, and I will prove it. There it is. That's fine too. That's a submission. So if you didn't want to bother, writing all this stuff out, that's fine. But yeah, if you do it this way, then your final output of your program may be easier to look at and obviously understand what you're trying to do. You don't just see the numbers and you have to infer, oh, that looks like the numbers for year, for minute and hour and everything. This makes it explicit. This makes it very clear that what you're intending to do is calculate the number of seconds in a year. So you could say, hours in day, 24, days in year, 365. And then you could either just log these, multiply them and log them right away, or you could say const seconds in year. Now, it's tricky because leap years have more seconds, so maybe this shouldn't be a const, I don't know, but we're just gonna ignore that for right now, and that's perfectly fine. Seconds in year would equal seconds in minute times minutes in hour times hours in day times days in year. And we are right at 80 columns wide, which is the most you probably want to put in a line of code, unless you are okay with scrolling horizontally and having it go off the end of the page, which most people like keeping it to 80. Some people are like 100 is okay, but this is getting pretty long for one line of code. But it all fits. So seconds in year is the number of seconds in a minute times the number of minutes in an hour times the number of hours in a day times the number of days in a year. And then we can log seconds in year. So this would be like, I guess this would probably be my default way of solving this, just a very basic, straightforward way of solving this. Obviously, there's other solutions. Again, like I said, this is a valid solution. That is valid as well. So there's really two things to take away from this homework. The first is that you can assign values and give them names, which makes your intent clear, which makes you have a better time when you're reading your program, expanding your program, changing your program, to understand clearly what it is you're trying to do, and to therefore, not make mistakes when you're coding. The other thing to take away from this is really that there are many ways to solve a lot of problems. I mean, the first homework, it's true too. You could have solved it with algebra without even doing any computer coding if you wanted to. But with programming, there are usually more than one way to do things. There are many variations. None of them are necessarily correct. And you could argue none of them actually are correct because of the leap year thing. So like there is better and worse ways depending on what you're trying to do, depending on what you need. And I think that's part of the point, is just, and that might have been what kind of baffled some people, is like, I'm looking for the right answer here. You kind of probably want to stop thinking like this for the rest of this entire course, is because there isn't going to be a right solution to one right solution to everything. Even when if you do these free code camp exercises, they will test the code that you write by checking many different possibilities and saying, well, does it behave correctly in this case, in this case, in this case? So your code is expected to behave correctly, but free code camp doesn't care whether the code you write matches the code that they would write. It's completely not how they tell whether your code is quote unquote correct or not. There is no exact correct code for almost any circumstance. So that's really the other thing to take away from this. Should I just paste this in the pasted code, or is everybody okay with it? I think we can. I don't want to, if anybody else wants to continue working on the homework and isn't in office hours, I want to give them the chance to do that. So this is the homework number 2. Uh-oh. How did that happen? Okay. Homework number 3 is the WizWaz. Ooh, this is the fun one. This is where the wheels came off and everybody was like, oh man, what are we doing? So let's do that. The problem is write a program that prints out the numbers from 1 to 100. But if the number is divisible by 3, so 3, 6, 9, 12, etc., print the word whiz instead of the number. If the number is divisible by 5, print was instead of the number. If the number is divisible by both 3 and 5, print whiz-was instead of the number. So this rule kind of supersedes both of these rules. It's kind of like, actually, never mind. It's a little weird. Like, you could argue like in a legal case that it's not perfectly explicit, you know, but we'll ignore that right now. The example kind of shows you what you should do. So 3 is replaced by whiz, 5 is was, 6 is whiz, 9 is whiz, 10 is was, 12 is whiz, 15 is whiz-was because it's divisible by both 3 and 5, and 30 is whiz-was, and it goes through in that way. Okay, this can be done with a single for loop. Printing out the numbers from 1 to 100 is something you can do for sure with a for loop that counts from 1 to 100 and runs some code each time. And in this case, we can make the inside of our for loop behave in such a way that it will do one or the other thing depending on what we're supposed to do for that number. We can use if-else statements to basically say that this time through the loop, it should print a number. Oh, this other time through the loop, it shouldn't print the number, it should print the word. But here's another thing about programming that I do a lot, and that I think, you know, it might not be clear to everybody right away, is the way I would start solving this problem would be to break it down into smaller problems, smaller requests. The first thing we're supposed to do is print the numbers from 1 to 100. And I'm just going to stop there and ignore the rest of it for right now. This could mean we're going down the wrong direction. You may find in some places this means you hit a dead end at some point and you have to backtrack. That's okay. In this case, just doing a for loop, it's not the wrong direction. You're going in the right direction. So if we say for int, or sorry, not int, there's no int in JavaScript. Let I equals, you could say 1. You could say 0, but then you have to print out I plus 1 because it says print the numbers from 1 to 100, not 0 to 100. So we'll say let I equals 1. That's where our loop will start. The second part of the for loop, if you remember, is the thing to check to see whether to continue looping on every loop. So this will be I less than or equals to 100. Now, some people did this less than 101, which is fine. That's the same thing. In this case, it will behave exactly the same. But the most straightforward way to look at this and understand is from 1 to 100. It implies it's inclusive. It implies you want to print 100. I think Mel actually went up to 99, but the problem never stated that. So that's technically correct. Normally, when you say print numbers from 1 to 100, I would guess that somebody would assume it also prints 100 at the end. So that's why it's less than equals here. It's not necessarily, it's again, something you could argue if you were a lawyer that it wasn't clear exactly, and you'd be right. The last part of the for loop is this, the thing to do after the end of every loop. So at the start of the whole looping process, the thing to check to see whether to continue looping, and the thing to do at the end of every loop. We close our parentheses, wrap all three of these in parentheses, and we're going to put curly braces to define the inside of our loop. And what I said just a little bit earlier is what I would do in this case is pretty much stop right here and check that I'm on the right track. So I would just put console.log I. Whoops, I. Just log it. That's it. We'll save this and we'll try this. And this will give us a sense of like, how are we doing? How are we progressing towards the actual goal that we're working on? You want to make sure that your loop would basically print the numbers from 1 to 100. And then we can start getting fancy with the what's inside the loop. So I'm going to just run this and we can see, yes, we're on the right track. We get 1 all the way down to 100.
Wait, what is the, but you did, can you not use the shortcut like the I++? Because I don't remember what that really means.
It means that.
Oh, okay.
You can also, there's a third way, you can do plus equals. If you want to get the hang of these things and you want practice, this is a great, there are free code camp exercises that go over these. And I definitely recommend doing those if you are sick of like trying to solve bigger problems and trying to remember the material. Try those free code camp exercises. They're pretty great for just training you and getting you used to stuff.
Okay.
And they're interactive, so you can they'll tell you that it's basically all self. You get to type code. It's all in a browser. You don't have to worry about where the files are. And the browser, the program, the site itself will tell you when your answer is right or right enough to pass all the tests that they run on. So obviously, there are many kinds of right, but I already said that. So this is the most expanded version of the I++.
And you'd need to use that if you were going to increment by 2 or something, right? There's no other shortcut way to.
Yeah, there's no I triple plus or I. Yeah, you would need to do that. You could, though, use the second shorthand. You could do plus equals 2. That would work.
Oh,
But
right.
you can't
Okay.
do any kind of like plus+ing. So, yeah. And by the way, just if you're curious, we'll save this. If you go by 2 at the end of every loop, you're going to see all the odd numbers because we start at 1 and at the end of every loop we add 2. So we only see 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, etc. But that's not the problem. You need to print every number and substitute in the words whiz and was when they're divisible by different things. So how do you make your program do one or the other thing depending on some condition? We learned this. It's a pretty simple piece of program logic, and I don't know if anyone can remember what I said or understand what I just asked and remember the right thing from class, and that's okay. You'll get the hang of this gradually. But does anyone know what you do in your program to make it do one or the other thing depending on a condition?
Brandy says the or and characters, and Mel says if.
Mel, yes, you're right. It's the if statement. Brandy, the or and, that's how you combine like 2 or more true or false values into one, and you want to check both of them. And or means either one is true, and means both of them have to be true. So the or and the and are more for combining conditions. So let's say this condition is true and this condition is true. It's for combining them together. Yeah. But in this case, in order to control which part of our program executes, which branch of our program we go into is what it's called. We use the if and the else if statements. So we can say if, whoops, and we can do this again. We can break this down and solve one little piece. If now the divisible by 3 and divisible by 5 is a tricky one. I think most of the submissions I got were able to figure this one out. But does anyone who hasn't solved this have a guess like how you do divisible by 3? Carolyn, you're muted.
I was just thinking, I was going to put in the chat, the /.
No, so that is divide by 3. So we could say, and by the way, this is fine to run this over and over just to test what you think. So console.log I divided by 3. And we could see this. This will show us each I divided by 3. So 0.333 is 1 divided by 3, 2 divided by 3, 3 divided by 3 is 1.
That's not what we're looking for. Okay.
Right. What we want actually is something that we can find a variation in when it is divisible by 3, basically when this is a whole number. So here's a fun way we could do it that nobody thought of. We could say parse int I divided by 3, and we're going to get 0, 0, 1, 1, 1, 1, and then you could say equals 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 I divided by 3. This would work. This will say true whenever it's divisible by 3. Watch. False, false, true, false, false, true, false, false, true. This is not the way that most people solve this. This is not the way you should solve this. But that's a little trick. It's just a little tricky trick because I'm very good at JavaScript. I know you can do that. That's saying basically if you chop off the decimal and then you just divide it, is it the same thing? So is basically it's asking, is I divided by 3 a whole number? Very tricky way to do this. The way that we would want to do this is, yeah, Brandy, you got it. It's not the percent operator, but it is the percent symbol. Yes, it's called the modulo operator or the remainder operator. So we say I, whoops, over here. We say I percent or modulo or the remainder when you divide by 3. And we can stop here and say I wanna look at the pattern here and try to figure out what this, whether this I think I know that the that this involves using the percent to find the remainder. I'm not sure exactly how to check for the if-else conditions from that. So it's fine to just log it here too. So we'll run this. We'll say 1, 2, 0, 1, 2, 0. 1, 2, 0. So it's a pattern. It just repeats as it counts up and if you remember, this was I1, I2, I3, and 6, and 9. So you can see that whenever it's divisible by 3, this is 0. And so now we have a way to check whether or not our number is divisible by 3. We just say equals 0. And we'll get the same pattern that we did with my crazy fancy version of it. False, false, true, false, false, true, and so forth. Now, we are all ready to, this is easy now to turn into an if statement because we already have the condition we're looking for here. We just replace this with if. If I percent 3 is 0, meaning it's divisible by 3. Inside here, we'll print console.log whiz. And we can say else console.log I. Because anything that's not one of our, so I mean, you can probably see how to extend this to 3 and 5 now, but we'll just run it just for fun. We'll replace all the divisible by 3s with whiz. So here we go. 1, 2 whiz, 4, 5 whiz, 7, 8 whiz, 10, 11 whiz. Okay. So in order to, the problem is saying, well, if it's 3, print whiz, but if it's divisible by, if it's divisible by 3, print whiz. We've got that. But if it's divisible by 5, print was. So we can do else if and put a second case in here. This will be I% 5, because it's the same exact pattern, it's the same exact logic that if you use this modulo and you give it the thing you want it to check whether it's divisible by, the number modulo 5 is going to be 0 if it's divisible by 5. So we put one more case here, else if this. And now we are going to log was. Okay. So we're getting closer. We see 1, 2 whiz for was, because that's 5. Whiz, because that's 6. 7, 8 whiz, because that's 9. Was, because that's 10. And on and so forth. It's working pretty well. The one thing we're missing now is if we look back at the thing, if it's divisible by both 3 and 5, you have to print whiz was. And it's never going to print both whiz and was, because one is in an if and one of them is in an else. So we can basically add another condition here. Sure, we could try this. Else if I% 15 is 0, we'll log whiz was. And if we run this, we're going to find that it's not doing that. 15 is just whiz. So why is that? We see that whiz is only logged right here. Well, if you think about this, it's really because it's checking this one first, this one second, this one third, and finally, if none of them match, or if none of these things are true, if this is not true and this is not true and this is not true, then it finally logs the number. So it's doing these in order. And the trick in this problem is that 15 is divisible by, or anything divisible by 15 is also divisible by 3. Actually, wait a minute. The problem states it differently. The problem says, if the number is divisible by both 3 and 5, print whiz was. So anytime something is divisible by both 3 and 5, it's going to be divisible by 3, of course, because that's one side of the conditional. And Brandy, this is where the and or the or comes in. Sorry, I remember there's a trickier version of this problem where you don't say divisible by both 3 and 5, you just say divisible by 15. And then you see if people can figure out, oh, wait a minute, everything divisible by 15 is divisible by both 3 and 5. So the thing we're missing here is no matter which way we do it, if we say divisible by 15 or if we use our and to combine them, we need to check that first, because it's going to match both of these. This is going to be true and this is going to be true. So it's going to grab the first one that matches, the first one that happens to be in the order there. And we don't want that to happen because we want it to print a different thing. We want it to print whiz was. So I'm going to get that out of there and then add a new condition at the top here. So we'll start, this will become an else if, and we'll start our whole thing by saying if I%3 equals 0, and, so a double ampersand. And I forget who it was, maybe Mel, somebody put a single ampersand here, which works in this case, but that is called a bitwise and. That's different. Just don't use it unless you've learned what it is, and you haven't learned what it is, and you probably won't need it in this whole course. So always use a double ampersand. So we say if I%3 is 0 and I%5 is 0. We're gonna log whiz was. And then we can move this up to the same line if we like this format. So it might be easier, by the way, to space them out more. That's okay. JavaScript, they like to smush them together like this, but if it's easier for you to read when you're just looking down, scanning down here, that's fine. It's fine to change it. You just want to make sure you understand that each of these are part of the same large if, else, if sequence. And it's only ever going to run one of these four. Okay. So yeah, so this is the solution. First, you have to check whether it's both, because if it is both, then it is both this one and this one. So it's going to hit either, whichever one of these is first. So you really do need to check for both first, and then either one. You know, you could check 5 first if you wanted to, it would still work, but I'll check 3 here and 5 here. And finally, if none of them match, then you log the number. So this is a big step up in puzzle level or difficulty level, because this is like a real programming problem. And by the way, this is like almost like a cliche problem. This is called Fizz Buzz in the tradition, in programming tradition, and it's something that people ask in programming interviews. And it used to be a thing where it's like, well, if you can solve Fizz Buzz, you're basically good at programming, or enough to be a real programmer, and you know, you could probably get a job based on just solving this. So if you can solve this by the end of the class, you're not in terrible shape compared to the industry standard, I guess. It's a little bit, I don't know. But yeah, this is like a real programming interview problem, and it's like the quintessential kind of like programming interview problem. And don't worry if this was completely baffling, because you've only been doing JavaScript for like a week. So if you solve this, you're doing pretty darn good. And if you didn't, don't worry about it. There's plenty more of the JavaScript module left, and then plenty more of the course left once we get into bringing it back into the browser. Okay. Yeah, we're at the hour. I'm fine to keep going. Let's quickly look at number 4, and then Latanya, you got really close to this, and you had a completely different solution, which is also pretty much, it also works. There's no right and wrong. This way is the right way. This is the most common way to solve it. That's all. This is like how most people end up solving this, is here. And I'll just paste this one in the pasted code to say, like, here is reference implementation of Fizz Buzz. Oops. This is the most default standard way to do WizWaz. There are other ways. If you want more of a puzzle, you can try solving WizWaz in a different way. There's plenty of other ways. There's many variations. But let's do homework problem 4 really quick. That was basically just demonstrating the form of a function. So the problem is, write a function that takes a string color as an argument, and it returns true if it is your favorite color, or false if it is not your favorite color. So I think everybody can realize that we're going to need to say function, unless we're doing that tricky arrow function thing, but let's just say function is check if favorite color. That's a good name for this. So we want this function should return true or false based on whether it's your favorite color. Now this part is a little tricky. I think a lot of people got stuck with, what does this mean? It takes a string color as an argument. I probably should have edited this, and I guess I will right now, to say takes a string as an argument. Maybe that's a little easier to understand. But in any case, it takes one argument. This function has to have one argument. So in the parentheses, when we define our function, we need to put our argument, what the name that we're going to give our argument that we pass to this function in here. And the name I would choose is color. Because we are passing it a string argument, which should be a color, and we're checking whether it's our favorite color. So the argument color is the only argument to this function, close the parentheses, and then the body of the function checks whether this is our favorite color. Now, obviously, this might, your answer is probably going to depend on what your favorite color is. Oh, Mel, so you're saying like something like this? Like that?
That's what I was thinking at first.
Yeah. So it's I guess like, yeah, the argument is kind of another kind of variable. So it's definitely, you can't put literal anything in here. You can't put a literal number in here. You can't put, a true in here. This here in the form of a function, the argument has to be basically like a variable. It's basically like the name part of a variable. It's not const color. It's just the name. So color. Yeah. Yeah, sorry. I mean, that was not super clear. And I mean, I think like the only way you would have figured that out is by looking at other functions and kind of recognizing the pattern. So like, yeah, like I totally understand the confusion, and it's definitely one of those things that you're just going to get used to. This, I wouldn't worry too much about this. This isn't going to get very mathy. If we look at binding functions, that's a fun little thing where you're doing some tricks with the arguments, but there isn't like a whole lot of, it's really just a matter of getting used to it. So the point of this assignment was to just try to get used to it. Yeah. Yeah, cool. So you figured it out just from the pattern. Brandy, what's up?
Hello?
Hi.
Yeah, I wanted to know if for the argument it could take a what is it called? A let or const statement. Like let's say that
Yeah. No, so no, arguments to functions are just the name of the variable. So if you did const color, it equals green here. When it's an argument, you don't put the const at all. It's just the name. Just the name.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. So but it works like a variable though. It works just like a variable. So now color, you could console.log color. You have a reference to something named with the name color because you passed it in as an argument. And if we wanted to test this, we could call our function, check if favorite color, and pass it blah. Well, that's not a color, but the function won't care. It's just going to console.log it. So in this case, you can do a literal string, quotes around it. You can do a number. You could do a true. And the function is not going to care because all it's doing is console.log it. So if we run this, it logs true, which is kind of silly. This doesn't make sense. Now, obviously, you could also do const color equals red, like that, and then you could pass it in here. Now, this is almost like a little more confusing, though, because you have color defined here, and it becomes color defined here, but it doesn't have to. I mean, you don't have to use this variable here. You could say const shape equals red, which is super confusing, and why would you ever do that? But in theory, you could pass this another variable, but it becomes color as soon as it's passed into the function. And then for the entire interior of the function, it's the name that the argument has, not the name that you originally had down here. These things are what's called passed by value, or in the case of an object, passed by reference. They're never passed by variable name. So the name outside the function will never really necessarily match the name inside the function. The names inside the function really should be the names of the arguments inside the function are all defined up at the top of the function. A little tricky. So I'll make shape square. And if we check if favorite color shape, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. We're going to see square, not red. Even though we're logging color, it came from here, which came from here. And what we passed in was not the word shape or the word color, it was the value of this. So man, this is very confusing. There might be a less confusing way to demonstrate this, but the point is that inside the function, the names of the arguments, they're basically like variables, but they come from whatever you put here. So circle, whatever you pass in, the value you pass in is going to become bound to this name and logged here. You could do 1 and so forth. You can't put values up here. You can't put const up here in the definition of your function, but you can pass them in when you're running your function. Okay.
So basically what he's saying is that when you're creating the function, the argument can be any word. You could put dog in there.
Yeah.
But then when you go to run your function, whatever value you put in that spot of the argument that you're passing is what's going to show up in your console.
Yeah. And that value could come from a variable. It could come from an expression. You could do 5 + 5.
I mean, if it doesn't follow what that thing is, I don't understand this at all.
Well, are you saying if it's not because it's not a color or it's not a word?
I don't know.
I actually, this is Latonia. I actually thought there was a step where we had to have it return true. Like we were literally checking colors.
Oh yeah, there is. We're not.
Okay.
So I'll finish the function really quick. So the answer to this would be if color equals, mine is, I'll say yellow, return true, else return false. So this is an answer for me. In this case, I passed 10. It's going to return false because not only is it not my favorite color, it's not even a color. And not only is it not a color, it's not even a string. It's a number. So yeah, Brandy, what's up? Oh,
Can it return a statement? A string statement, I mean. So like what I was trying to do is I created a variable for my favorite color and I put in my favorite color. Underneath that, I created another variable, but it's an array of like Roy G. Viz, but the colors are written out, red, orange, yellow, and strings. What I was trying to do was iterate through, well, that's a little bit too far ahead. I wanted to go through each item in the array for random colors one by one. Like on click, you'd get a random color.
yeah.
But with each random color, a statement would be returned. So like red, in the log, it would say red, ... is this your color? And then every click it'll turn until it hits the color, and then it'll return. I know I'm thinking too far ahead, but I feel like
that's
with what
awesome.
we've learned, I can do it.
That's awesome. Could you post that code in the pasted code?
No, I have it. It's just I was too afraid to send it in. What I had so far.
Well, all right. Look, you can keep working on it if you want. If you want to see how, if you want to work on it, collaborate on it, it's called pair programming on it, that's fine. Let me know, whatever you want to do. But that's awesome, number one. Number two, you're way beyond what the actual assignment was. Yeah, so yeah.
Can
that is
I
super-
collaborate on that?
Absolutely, yes. Let me know like when's a good time, or stick around once we're done with the homework problems if you want.
Okay,
I have a question.
Yeah.
What I guess I don't even know what console.log is because you didn't have it and it still showed the answer. So why do you need it? Or what is it? Like when you, that number line 11, you didn't have console.log and we still got false.
No, we didn't. If I just run it,
Yeah.
we get nothing.
Oh. Okay.
So,
So you have to have
like,
that.
well, in order to print something out from your program, at some point somewhere there has to be a console.log. Now you could say console.log true here, but then this function isn't very useful in other places because I couldn't call it from somewhere else in my program and act on whether it's true or false. All this function would be doing is printing to the console. So you really, in normal cases, when you want a reusable function, you want to work on the inputs and outputs of the function, and you want to return things and then maybe log them or whatever outside, because that means I could do something with that true. I could do an if else based on that true, or I could, cause something else to happen based on that, rather than it always being all it can do is log to the console. So that's why we return the value from here, but then you still need to. And whoever said, yeah, we should pass yellow, absolutely. Or if you pass red, it will still return false. But what I'll do here to make this more explicit, I'll say const is red my favorite color equals the result of running that. And then we can console.log is red my favorite color. And that's false because it's yellow. So if we put yellow, well, it's true, but now our variable is named wrong. So maybe we should not name it that because it's not a very flexible name, but you get the idea with naming and assigning the true or false to something with a name. Sure, you can also just take this expression, the result of that, the expression there, and console.log it directly. So you just pass this as an argument to the log function. So it's taking the string value yellow, passing it as an argument to check if favorite color, and then taking whatever that returns and passing it immediately as an argument to console.log, which will print it out. And you could do const yellow equals the string yellow. You could give it a variable name, which is a little redundant in this case, but not always a bad idea. Sometimes you don't want arbitrary strings everywhere in your program. You want to give them concrete definition. So if we had a variable with the same name, we could pass it like this, or my color. We could pass that. Yeah, so a lot of this stuff, it's just going to take time. It's going to take time to get used to it. Especially if like functions, if you haven't seen any other like programming languages that have like a function like ever, this stuff is very like confusing because I mean, we're talking about some very advanced ways. The reason it's confusing is because functions can do so much stuff, so much beyond what we're showing here. You can do all kinds of different variations just by putting, a function could do so many different varieties of things. And it's a very abstract kind of concept. And that's why it's confusing. and it really is one of those things that will just take time to get used to. But like, please keep like asking when you're wondering like, how does this relate to the argument up here? Why are you wrapping this in another console.log? Const is my color my favorite color? Would be like that.
I have a question about the structure, but maybe you already went over this. I'm sorry, I was working on something else, but the purpose of the word return, like I kind of did something similar, but I actually just had it console logging one thing or the other instead of doing return true, but you have the console log at the bottom. So yeah, I'm just curious about, so every time you do a function, you should have return there, and then
it's not necessarily like a hard requirement, but so you said you put console.log like here.
Yeah, that it was the right answer or the wrong answer. Yeah, like that one said console log, that's the right color, and then the other one said no gets again.
Yeah, so you could definitely do that, or you could but I like that is a function that has side effects, and that is not as reusable in a way, because I couldn't, like, so let's say like I wanted to imagine we had like a form or whatever, and we had, document.
I think this is where my problem was, because I had a prompt at the bottom, and it was working when I was doing it on it like by itself with the rest of the code commented out. I put it in the homework. I like submitted 2 versions of it, but okay.
So let's imagine we had a form with an input that had a class blah, and this is a web page. This is in the future, and you want to say input dot what is it about query selector blah. This is an input element, so it's going to be value, I think, node value. I don't know. Anyway, you have this value that you get from the HTML, however we do that. And it's like when you're asking the user to see whether it's their favorite color. If you said const did user select my favorite color, or however you want to, maybe there's a shorter way to describe this, equals check if favorite color. And then I want to show like maybe some kind of animation, or like play a sound or something if they picked my favorite color. If you just console.logged in here, you wouldn't be able to really do anything with that, because the only thing your function can do is console.log. So from here, now I could say, well, I have a true or false. And now I could say if did user then do play sound, hooray, or however whatever you want to happen, you can make anything happen based on this. And the function then just kind of it's called a pure function. It just has inputs and outputs, and it translates the color to a true or false based on whether it's your favorite color. And that's all it does. Generally, I'm encouraging this practice just because it makes your program less brittle. It makes it more able to be changed around and stuff like that.
Okay, I'm gonna try changing it to that and see if that fixed my other problem. Thank you.
Yep. Okay, so yeah, the function one. Whoops, I'll put my example into the chat. Okay. Yeah, Mel, you got it. The only feedback I would say is you might want color singular, just because you're only passing in one color at a time. And like it's still gonna work, it's still fine, but like you know, that has the risk of like later on, you might look at that argument and think, oh, this is going to be an array of colors or something just because it's plural. So like, yeah, it looks, that's right though. That does the job. Okay. What does the message in the integrated console for the color homework assignment? Module not found. Carolyn, what did you try to run? Because
Well, let's see. Oh, it doesn't show it.
because you should be running node. You might have misspelled the name of actually this function, that's not spelled right. That's got an A in the middle of it. So you probably ran node something other than the name of your file.
Okay. All right.
And the way you could try to do that is by hitting the tab character, press one character in the name, hit the tab character. It'll try to complete as much as it can.
Oh, okay. Just like in terminal. Okay.
Yeah. And then, you know, in this case, it would fill in practice. If you put P and tab, it would do practice HW. But then it doesn't know whether it's this one or this one. If you did a capital C and hit tab again, it would finish this whole thing. And you would know that's an actual file because the terminal will only complete it if there's a real file there.
Right. And so it's not like a directory repository issue. So I'll just, great. All right. And I had that in Slack for you to maybe see later or whatever, but
I mean, it looks like you're in the right folder, but it looks like you didn't open the full classroom code base again. You're in the module 4 folder. So who knows? You could be in a totally different folder. You've gone off the script again.
Yeah, so, so I have all the code base stuff. It's in my desktop on the Mac, but then for the purpose of just working on the files, I just did a file open and I started at that level.
Okay. I mean, that's
confuses
okay. That's okay. That's fine, especially during office hours or when we're working one-on-one. That's fine. And you should be practicing that. So that's fine. But we might need to, if you can't get it to work, like, you know, stay after and
so what I should be doing for the purposes of this class, when I open folder, whatever, I should go all the way up to the code base level and bring
whenever we're in class. Yeah. And that's just because we have to keep a pace going and we have to kind of like make sure that, you know, all 16 or 17 people can follow the same instructions. Right. So like, it's really just for class. Yeah.
Yeah. But it also helps the console know what's going on too. So, but I mean, I'm just pulling in what
I'm not sure. I would guess in this case you typed a slightly different version of the file name, but I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Let's look at it.
Yeah, I'm having some carpal tunnel stuff, so sometimes my pinky isn't behaving when I type. So, but anyway, yeah, I don't want to bog us down now.
No, I mean, we're pretty much done. I don't know if, like, Latanya, did you want to look at your alternative WizWaz? Or should we
oh yeah, you can if there's time.
Yeah, I mean, it's office hour and a half, I guess.
Yeah, and I'm watching this on my PC. I don't know if screen share happens very well on this. So if you needed me to do that, I could log into Zoom on my Mac again.
Well, how about if you're having trouble with it and the name of the file doesn't work, just ping me after this. We can and get on your Mac and we can do it from there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay. I've been coding along on the Mac while I'm watching this on my PC, and I find that very helpful.
Cool.
Once I finally found the right login on my PC for the Zoom chat. Something. Yeah. Anyway, I'm done. I'm sorry.
Okay. I'm still sharing. Okay. So Latanya, this is the latest draft you sent me. And it is so close. It's so close. This is right. It's all right. The only thing, you got all of the logic stuff right. And in a very clever way that is like totally different than the example I showed. But your console.log is in the wrong place. That's the only thing about it. So I think like you're in really good shape, but the one thing you're kind of missing is how to organize the for loop so that it has the right thing. Like, why is the console.log down in this block here?
I feel like that's what I learned when we went through the application process. I kept remembering putting the console log towards the bottom.
Sure.
And so, and then, I don't know if you remember, but this is my 5th draft for this homework. And
Yeah,
remember, all the other ones were super long. So,
yeah.
you know,
But
I don't know. It just made sense to me,
the
to
other
have it
ones
down
were
there.
also the other ones were also very close. I think the thing that is, so here, this is I'm sorry, but this is what's wrong.
Just an extra set of brackets.
Yep, a closing bracket and then an opening bracket. That's the only thing wrong with it.
Wow. Okay.
Oh, this is hw1.js. Brandy, yes, of course. Let me know. I'll text you. Like, let me know what's good times for you. I have I'm doing a social thing like later today, like this evening. But tomorrow I'm around. I'm around for a while now. But yeah, let me know what's a good time. Tomorrow would be fine. Let me know, and I'll send that in Slack too, because I don't know if you're still there. But cool. Okay, nice. Yeah, so this is it. And so what happens here is your for loop, and you can see this in VS Code. If you highlight one, if you put the cursor, if you click like right next to this curly brace, and this, you can see this is the curly brace that starts your for loop. It will actually put a little box around the matching pair that ends the same curly brace. And you can see, if you click on this, that the brace is ending here, which means the for loop itself is ending here. And oh yeah, it's, I guess actually, look, it does it anytime you're even inside the for loop at all. So you click here, you can see where the boundaries are of that for loop. And this, I mean, really should immediately jump out that like there's something wrong here, because your console.log should definitely happen 100 times. It should definitely be part of your for loop. So, moving this up is what you need to do. And this one's don't really do anything. Actually, I'm not sure. Does it? This just errors, right? Because by the time you get down here, you're outside of your for loop, and then this doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, I
Because
kept
remember,
getting 2 lists. I kept getting 2 separate lists. And I was like, why are they not combining? Like I would have all 1 to 100 and then just the whiz was.
yeah, that's probably another if you, yeah, that's probably another bracket. I noticed like it just seems to largely be related to the brackets you have that are kind of organizing your code into loops and blocks and things. Like, you're nailing it. This is a really cool solution, by the way. Like this, I don't know if anybody can understand this, but this is a really, really neat way to do it. What we're doing here is going from 1 to 100, making a new variable each time to show the result of this one number. So we'll get 100 new instances of this thing called print result. Each time through the loop, there's a brand new one, and you're initializing it with an empty string. And then you only need 2 if statements, because whiz-was will actually be printed as a result of both of these matching. You have an if and an if, not an if and an else. So it's possible for both of these to match, and then you're actually constructing the word whiz-was if both of them match, and the right whiz or was if only one of them matches. Now, I would say, I would usually in this case wrap these in curly braces too. This is fine. If there's a 1-line if statement, you can omit those brackets, but I'm scared of, I never do that actually in my own code, because I'm too scared that like I'm going to mess it up. So I will always like just put these here anyway. But anyway, it's a very cool, very elegant way to solve this. Yeah.
I have a question about this. Is the console.log has to be within the curly braces, or no, it doesn't matter?
It definitely has to be within this set of curly braces, because
Okay.
this set of curly braces defines the boundaries of your for loop. And anything outside of that set of curly braces is not going to loop at all. It's only ever, this would only run once. So we know we have to log for every single number. So we pretty much know that we have to log inside our for loop, because that's the only code that's going to run once for every number. So yeah, it has to be inside the brackets, because it has to be inside the for loop, because it has to print once for every number. And the
So
only
like
thing that
otherwise
is,
it's not reading that problem or whatever.
well, otherwise it's only running once. The only thing that the only code that runs once for every number, the only code that loops at all. Ariel, cheers. Consistent patience. Very good. The only code that runs over and over and over is the stuff inside the for loop. So there's no possible way that you could get the result you need, console.log, out here, because this code will only run once, and you need to log once for every number. One thing you could do, actually, is you could say, let final result equals an empty string here. And instead of console.log, you could say final result plus equals what you're logging here instead. So this is one way you could only console.log once and then log the whole thing at the end. But I don't think that's what you were thinking, right? You weren't thinking of storing something and then logging at the end.
I don't know.
Like, you need to do something to accumulate those results, whether you're printing them right in here or whether then you're saving them off to something outside the loop and then printing that thing. You need to do one of those two things in order to have any hope of printing one thing for each number, because the only code that runs anything for each number is the code inside the for loop. That's what the for loop does. It does code for each number. I guess I'm getting a little abstract with that. I hope I didn't lose everybody, but yeah.
So if you were making that into a function, you might do that and store that result, and then just, like, it might be more useful to store the result than to print it in that case.
Yep, you're right. So let's do that. Let's do a real quick version of this that uses a function. Oh. So here's really how you do it on new lines. You'd have to do the print that Latanya had, or the value that Latanya came up with here, and then always end it with a new line, which is, you can do like this, \n, which goes to the next line. And that works. Okay, yeah, let's do it like a function. So we could do this, function. Get whiz or was or number. We pass our number to our function. We'll empty out our for loop, or actually I'll take this code, put it up into here, and we'll modify it. So our function takes our number as an argument. Our function starts, this is Latanya's method, where it starts with the empty string. If it's divisible by 3, it adds whiz to that string. If it's divisible by 5, it adds was to that string. So if it's both, the string by now will have both whiz and was, because you've accumulated both in there. And then it would just return this. Now this is a trick. I don't know if Latanya, if you got this from somewhere where you looked it up, but this is a really cool trick to say, if you remember, the empty string evaluates to false, to falsy. And a trick you can do in JavaScript this is basically saying if print result return print result, or else return I. It's the same effect as that, but it's like a very tricky short way of saying if print result is truthy, which only happens when it's a non-empty string, very, very tricky, then return that. Otherwise, return I. So this is a cool solution. I'm going to go back to the other solution for this example, just because it's a little tricky. It's a very cool, tricky way. So we have our basic set of if statements. If it's divisible by both, here we're console.logging, we would change this to say return. So we'd say return whiz-was, return whiz, return was, and then finally return I, if none of those are true. And then now that we have our function, we can say const whiz or was or number equals get whiz or was or number, and we pass that I as the argument. And then we need to console.log this. So here's a way to do it where we separate our looping logic right here. Yes, I will. And Latanya, this so you do the character next to the 1 key is the backtick, the character to the left to the 1, and you do that 3 times. Backtick, backtick, backtick. And then the whole thing changes into this gray block, and I paste it right into here with Command V, and then you can just hit enter and you're good.
That lets us put the comment on top also
Which
with the
comment?
code, how you did earlier.
Which comment?
I thought you put a comment on like, this is the code for such and such, and then you put the block and it was all one piece as opposed to I've been doing them separate.
You
Yeah,
mean
right
like
there,
this?
reference. Isn't that one?
No. So in order to get this and this all as one comment is what you're saying,
Yes.
you could do shift enter instead of regular enter. That
Shift
would,
enter.
yeah, but
Okay.
then you have to do the 3 backticks still on the next line. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah. So yeah, Mel, this is the version where we've split out the looping logic into this part, and we've done the whole logic that turns the number into whiz-was, whiz, was, or the number. We've put all that logic into a function and we've given it a name. And this might make it easier to understand in a larger program when you know that this is one little piece of the problem. You've solved that piece of the problem, you've given it a name, and the point of the function now is that you can just forget how to do all this thing, the percent thing. As long as this works and you're all done with it, all you need to do elsewhere in your program is say, I want whiz or was or the number, and then say exactly that by running your function. That's it. So this is the point. This is like the basic point of functions, is to be able to do this anywhere. and to split up, this complexity from the for loop complexity.
Thank you. That was really helpful for the homework, like translating it into a function like that.
Cool. Okay, yes. And for the
The
weekend
big
homework, by the way,
I was just
yeah,
looking at, yeah.
the weekend homework, by the way, is basically doing this, but the
Yeah.
puzzle is that there's basically the same code running 3 times, and you can pull those 3 copies into one function, delete the second and third copy basically, and then only call that function 3 times, like this. And then your program gets shorter, there's less duplication. If you change the behavior of one dice roll, it will change all of them, and everything will stay more organized. So that's the whole point of the weekend project. I'm not going to do that right now because I want to give everybody a chance to try it. But we'll go over it on Monday.
Yeah, what you just said was actually very helpful because I was looking at it and I was trying to figure out how to divide it up, and if I should divide it up into 3 dice rolls, or if I should divide up the individual sections of each dice roll to be more flexible later. So that's helpful. We're just dividing it into 3 things,
Okay.
right? Each dice roll is going to be a function.
Yes. Well, each dice roll is going to be a calling a function.
Calling, yeah.
Dice rolling
what I meant.
itself will
Sorry.
just be one copy in a function.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So what else we got today? I mean, we really should probably end it pretty soon, but yeah, Brandy, do you want to do like tomorrow after work, or okay, let's do tomorrow, because I don't want to be rushing. That sounds really cool what you're working on, and I don't want to be rushed for it. So cool. Sounds good. Who else? Does anyone else have questions, or should we say enjoy the weekend? See you Monday. Carolyn, how did it go with running your code?
I just posted another screenshot, and I did it with the color one, and it came back with yellow. So I think it worked.
Yay. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Of course. Yeah.
And it gave me a couple of, I clicked on problems, that little, and it showed me, which line and which thing, and I could see right away, oh yeah, that needed a this, and this shouldn't have been there. I added a letter to this.
So what Carolyn's talking about is this thing here. So if I say,
it was actually the color one, but
yeah, it will say identifier expected. It will point you to all of the red squiggles, basically. It will list them out here. So if you have a big program, you want to find all of the parts where it has a problem, you can go to this problems thing.
So
yeah.
I'm just glad it's not a repository directory Git
yeah.
issue anymore, because I'm getting sick and tired of that being like something that just doesn't seem to want to behave itself. It's like I have all the steps and I leave one out, or I click on the wrong button or something. So that made me happy to know that it was some other thing like attention to detail and typos with a numb pinky. So I was
cool. Well, progress.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is good.
Yep.
I'm happy that everybody is kind of like come along so much with the running the code. Everybody's been able to run Node to do that. And people are starting to get the hang of some of these programming things, which is great.
Yeah.
This is, it's going to take time. We'll
and I've seen a little JavaScript before, and my son tried to teach me a little over the summer, but I wasn't ready to dive that deep. So, I mean, that part of itself hasn't been an issue. It's just something new to learn. It's just, I was really feeling sick after my vaccine last week. So I was like in class, but not in class. Yep. So I need to go to class again this weekend via the videos.
You picked the wrong week to get that vaccine.
Well, it was my second one. I had to have it.
Yeah.
But I mean, so I wasn't getting as much out of it. All the stuff you were talking about was just kind of going, so I think, going back and looking at the parts of the class video that apply specifically, and then taking a stab at, the different homework assignments. And that's why you haven't really gotten much from me. So cool. I think that'll make all the difference. And then this office hour, I wasn't sure what we were going to do exactly. And I'm not glad people are having trouble but
Yeah.
I'm glad I'm not the only one. And it's great. We have to let you know where we're at, and you're so
Yeah,
great about
yeah.
responding to that, as are
I'm-
all the instructors. I really appreciate your time, your expertise, your demeanor. You're so kind and patient and caring.
Thank
and
you. Thank you.
passionate about it. So get outside. I'm going to be inside, but that's okay. Get
All right.
outside and enjoy, everybody.
Yeah. And yeah, Latanya, yeah, the decisions are tricky. And I hope the one technique that everybody kind of got out of today is that kind of like, this is what I really do when I'm programming, where I look at a problem and then I try to do the most basic tiny little piece of it and then run that and see how it's running, see if that works, and then add a little bit to it. And then you're still obviously going to have to make these decisions, and you're going to find dead ends sometimes and have to backtrack, and that's just part of it. But yeah, hopefully this was helpful. Yeah.
Any skills. I mean, I think of kids learning to get dressed. Our son had some sensory issues, so he wouldn't get dressed. Not because he didn't know how to do all the steps, because he couldn't do the end step, and that overwhelmed him. So it's like,
yep.
You don't have to do it yet. Let's start with it. And so it's a similar kind of thing. So I've got to have this thing and it's got to be perfect and I've got to stop. Just play with it. I mean, especially now, it's not like our job rests on the, if we don't get this done by Friday, we get fired or something. So, but it's a lot for everybody.
Well, again,
But we're good.
It's going to take time. It's going to take tenacity, consistence, that's it. But enjoy the weekend.
Grit. That's what Jesse
grit,
called it in my acceptance letter. You need the grit.
Yep.
So, all right. Ciao, Bella, everybody. Take care.
Have a great
weekend. Thank
you. Let me know on Slack anything. Brandy, if you're still there, let's talk tomorrow and look at the code you're working on. All right.
Yes,
All right.
I appreciate I turned in my homework for the color one. It's doing something weird that I don't know why it's doing it. So when you have a chance, I'd appreciate if you looked at that. Thank you.
Of course, I'll do that. All right. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Let's see. And see you later. Karen, see you Monday. And
Karen, can you send me a link? I promise to be really quick. Thanks, Gus. This was awesome.
Cool. I'm glad everyone showed up. This is less stressful than material. We're
It's still material, but
yeah.
yes.
Yeah.